Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video where I am today talking about a project that I have going on, which is an update to the Bioretention Technical Design Guidelines. So we, Water by Design, where I'm currently fortunate enough to work, are embarking on a project to update the Bioretention TDG for the first time in over a decade now. So this is a really important seminal document, and in the last video I talked about why it is personally really important for me and was important in my career. But as you can tell, I'm super passionate about it, and we are updating it, and we are currently inviting feedback on the existing document so we can know that what people like, don't like, need to change, want to change, this sort of stuff, so that we can include all of that in the update that we are going to do soon. So we're currently out for public consultation on the existing document. And yeah, I want as many people to give feedback as possible. And this has inspired me to make these videos. So this is the second video of two. And in the first one, I talked a little bit about the history of the document, but why it's personally important to me. Because as I said, it is a really seminal document, and it was really important for my career because I was involved in publishing the original version of the Bio TDG, and it was pretty early on in my career and a big project. In this video, I want to flag a couple of items that maybe I think could do with some changes there, and by no means are these fait accomplis, but there are items that I've discussed with others, including Sean at Design Flow. So they're on my radar, but I'm raising them today just to try and get your creative juices flowing, again, to encourage you to submit thoughts and ideas. As I say, they are not fait accomplis. They're just things that have come up on my radar. So I'm going to pull up the old trusty laptop here that has turned off on me as I've been talking, and run through a couple. So one potential area that we could do with some changes here is on page 28 of the guideline. Is it? Yep, it's both 28 of the PDF and of the real document. There's a diagram that talks about different drainage profiles in bioretention systems. And fundamentally, it's actually a really good diagram that deals with a variety of different types. So this is in terms of like saturated zone systems, or systems that are sealed, or systems that are unsealed to encourage infiltration. All really good stuff in there. But it is the case that there's a type missing out of there. And it is also the case that the naming convention on a couple of them, I know why we picked it, but it's maybe just not quite hitting the mark. So I think maybe a little retweaking around there is a good one. Another good one, if we flick forward to page 79, and this one really is as close, this one's closer to a fait accompli that something needs to change here. The first one's like if it didn't change, the world wouldn't end, and the world wouldn't end for this one either, but this one's closer to it. So on page 79, figure 43, there's a figure that shows different under drainage arrangements or outlet pit connections. So saturated zone systems, the arrangement of how you connect the under drainage into the outlet pit to form the saturated zone. And there are 4 different options presented here. And 2 of them are decent, but best practice design has actually moved on. There's actually another way that people like Design Flow are designing systems these days that's not in the guideline. And 2 of the designs in here, while technically functional, are so incredibly over-designed that unless you had the most ridiculous niche case design, you just wouldn't choose them. So my suggestion here would be that we probably want to cross out a couple of those really ridiculous ones because they're just not standard practice. And we probably want to add in the new design that people like Design Flow are using more commonly, because it's a pretty simple way to make saturated zones work. And then, the other 2 probably stay there. But yeah, so some tweaks there. By the way, just in case you're curious which ones, so the 2 that are workable are in the diagram, option 2 and option 3. Both have their place in there. The ones that are kind of silly over-designed, in my opinion, are options 1 and 4 in that diagram. But as I say, you never know. If you feel strongly about 1 and 4, you let me know. And then the third spot, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, I've just picked 3 that I wanted to talk about here, is vegetation design. So on page 86 of the document, it starts a relatively big section about planting within bioretention systems. And obviously this is really important because the plants are an absolutely critical component of bioretention. And one of the things that I'm really proud of about the current document is that it introduced the idea that it was okay to put trees in bioretention systems. So prior to the 2012 version of this document and the subsequent update in 2014, that is the current version here, it was really considered a little bit of a no-no to put trees in bioretention systems because there were concerns that the tree roots would block the underdrains and all sorts of stuff there. But around that kind of 2010 to 2012 period, I and others did work that showed that that was that there was no evidence to support those concerns. And then the 2012 and 2014 versions of the document introduced the idea that, hey, it's okay to put trees in bioretention systems. And I'm super proud of that because the simple thing is that if you are interested in reducing maintenance costs of bioretention systems, getting canopy cover into systems to shade out weeds, drop leaves that builds carbon in the systems and all this sort of stuff, bringing in species diversity, which in turn makes better habitat for wildlife and all this sort of stuff. All of this is enhanced by bringing trees into bioretention systems. So I'm really proud that the document introduced that. But I don't think it quite went far enough. I think we've learnt some stuff over time. So when you flick forward in the document here, and I go to, I should have looked this up sooner, planting density. This is the one I'm after. So I'm now on page 94 on table 21. There's a table that talks about how densely to plant different species in bioretention systems. And it includes both ground covers, shrubs, and trees. But the recommendation for trees here is 1 plant per 20 to 100 square meters. And even the recommendation for shrubs is 1 plant per 2 to 20 square meters. The simple reality is that that's not dense enough to get good canopy cover to suppress weeds. I recently did a little bit of a desktop survey accompanied by some photographs of systems that I had. And when we look at the systems that are well vegetated with trees, with a canopy that is clearly suppressing weed growth, the trees, and obviously this can vary species to species, but the trees are typically spaced at something like 1 per 16 square meters. Now, 16 is quite a precise number there. We could just round it to a 5 and say 15. But the point is, the current guideline suggests 1 tree per 20 to 100 square meters. And what we're finding is that really we need to be down somewhere around 15, 16. It really does vary with species though, like that. So I would like to see a shift in the guideline at the very least towards encouraging more dense planting of trees in bioretention systems. But my own personal bias is that we should also slightly rejig the emphasis here and actually make it that almost by default, trees have to go into bioretention systems unless you argue otherwise. Whereas what the current guideline does is it opens it up and says, look, you can put trees in, you can not put trees in. If you do, you don't, like here's how you do it sort of thing. But there's no, it doesn't express a strong preference one way or the other. My opinion, having observed so many different systems over the years, is that it makes more sense for us to make putting trees and other levels of species into bioretention systems the default approach. And then if someone doesn't want to do that, give them the outs to argue the way out of that. Because obviously there are situations, you're building a high amenity bioretention system in a civic area in a city, then we're not necessarily going to want to put trees in that system. You could be going for another landscaped amenity outcome, and that's totally fine. But you're doing that with an understanding that maintenance is probably going to be higher. But by default, the vast majority of bioretention systems that are being built are basins of, 100, 200, 300 square meters, in a subdivision, or adjacent to a riparian area, this sort of thing, where it just makes way more sense to dramatically reduce our maintenance costs by getting trees in there, and also to make the systems better integrate with bushland and the like, to increase overall green space, overall habitat for wildlife, etc. So my opinion is that the guidelines should be, the emphasis should be changed in the vegetation section to make trees the default that someone can opt out of if they want to, rather than at the moment where they are an option, but you have to decide to put them in. But as I say, clearly, right, I feel passionately about that one. And if you're, watching in on this, you'll be like, oh, if Jack gets his way, that'll be the case. But it isn't a fait accompli. I'm quite genuine that, if you don't agree with that, fill out the feedback form and tell me. Like, it's what this is about, right? I am very open to being told I am mad as a half-cut snake. Okay, so that brings me to, nearly the conclusion of this. What I want to say now is we're currently open for feedback on the existing guideline. Now, I will put a link in both the description of the YouTube video and in any LinkedIn posts or that sort of thing that I make alongside this video, so you can go find the feedback form. Strictly speaking, I believe the feedback form says that we are open for feedback until COB Friday, the 5th of September 2025. That's only a week and a half away as I make this video. It was our intention to give more time for feedback, but the way a couple of things panned out, that's what's ended up going out there. So what I'll say is this: try and get me feedback by Friday the 5th. But if you cannot do that, but really want to give feedback, just flick me an email, the details are on the feedback form, and just say, hey Jack, I'm really keen to give feedback. I haven't quite got there. I just want you to know it's coming. And then give yourself an extra week if you need to, something like that. I prefer to get your feedback a little late than to not get it at all. That's the simple reality. Okay, and thus, I'm going to bring this video to a conclusion just by playing Bioretention TDG Easter egg game. So I'm going to flick through a couple of the pictures in the guideline and just tell you random little stories that are probably utterly insignificant to you, but they're interesting to me. So the front cover of the guideline, the 2014 version, is a picture of a bioretention system kind of on dusk. The sky's getting dark. It's in a car park. There's a boardwalk across it. Some lovely lights there. It's a really nice photo of a bioretention system. This is one in Logan that I found relatively early on in my career when I was working for Logan City Council. And what you can see, if you look on the right-hand side of the picture, next to the light there's just like the front corner of a blue Mitsubishi Lancer. That was my very first car that I ever bought, and it ended up in a photograph on the front of the Bio TDG. Presumably when we update the guideline, there's going to be a new photo and that little Easter egg of mine will disappear. Other little things of here. This guideline is like scattered with history of Jack, me, learning about bioretention systems. For example, in figure 7 on page 21, 3 of those 4 photographs are like some of the earliest bioretention systems I ever visited. In particular, the second photograph in figure 7, which shows like an outlet pit for a system and there's some water in it. That's the Ainsley Street bioretention system. That bioretention system taught me more about how bioretention works than any other system for a very long time. More recently, others have taught me more, but that system taught me heaps and heaps and heaps for the simple reason that it was a pretty well-designed system in Logan, really close to the council offices, and roughly speaking on my way home after work when I was really new to the industry. And so I made a habit of visiting that system over and over and over again, and have continued to occasionally drop into it from time to time now, to the point where I have a photographic record of that system from something like 45 different days over the last 15 years. But about 35 of them came in the first 2 years of my career. So that system's really special to me. and I'll endeavour to not let that photograph go anywhere. Okay, anyway, that's enough of Bio-TDG Easter egg hunting. The point is, we're doing an update to the document, we're out for consultation, and we really want to hear from you. Cool, thanks for taking the time to listen. I'll see you next time.